Plug it in, plug it in.
You got new art.
baby.
You are.
I like it.
You like it?
Above the table.
Huh?
Above the table.
Yeah.
How good is it?
Yeah, it's really nice.
I thought you'd like that.
Yeah.
Tell me when.
Always improving the home.
Yeah, well.
Always
this is
improving the
set.
home.
You can it's a tax write-off.
Yeah.
It's also your workplace.
Oh, that's true, actually. I want to get some lovely neon signs and digs.
No woofing allowed on this story.
No, actually.
Woofing quiet on set.
Oh, he's
this
a
dog.
non-barker. What's going on?
Do you edit much out or you just talk?
In the regular episodes, like ums and ahs and stuff, we kind of cut out, but that's about it, really. Yeah, unless it's something that we don't want to be out there.
If I say cunt or something.
Yeah, we can
should
take that
probably
out.
get rid of that.
Yeah,
Depends who
you
you're
let us know.
talking about.
Because this one won't be out for another week, so you let us know if there's anything you want to cut out. But should we kick it off, G? Should you kick it off, huh?
Kick it off.
Huh? Sorry, I said huh so aggressively.
Huh?
Yeah.
Today, as a very special treat for this Thursday, we have not only one of Melbourne's finest and longest serving senior news reporters.
Stop saying senior and longer serving.
Oh, I mean, I'm meant to be professional. But one of my very, very, very best friends, the one and only Candice Wyatt from 10 News.
Thank you. That makes me sound like I've just come straight from the 1950s.
And my woo was a bit strange as well. We don't usually start like this. We're very comfortable with
I brought
you.
my woo girl with me
woo girl.
today.
I'm just here as a support person to just cheer people on. Real hype man vibe.
Oh, hi, man. I did introduce you as my very good friend, but you're Sammy's too now.
I am.
Hell yeah.
You've
You know what? It
adopted
feels
me.
wonderful.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm a big fan of you. I'm a big fan of you as a person.
I'm a big fan of you too.
I think you're wonderful. And I was so excited to have you on the podcast as well because you're someone that I've met, in the last year.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you came to my podcast for the first time that I was doing live. And I was like, who is this person? Well, I already knew who you were.
Sammy,
I was like,
I have that effect on
yeah,
me.
I have that effect.
Sammy said to me so many times, like, does she always look that good? Like,
Yeah.
I've never seen
Yeah.
her not look absolutely
Yeah.
perfect. I'm
Oh,
like,
you should have seen me
her.
before I came here.
Ah, yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
a fright.
I can't imagine.
I've dressed up just for you. Put on some actual clothes and a lick of makeup, and here I am.
Oh my God. You're having a lick of Chardonnay while we're here as well. You've got
Yeah.
your Bond
Actually
socks
surf-
on.
Yeah, repping Bonds. If you need a sponsorship,
We
Bonds.
do. We always
Very interesting. We always need one. Absolutely.
We always
Crime does not pay. That's what they say.
Now, Candice, tell us a bit about your history with reporting on crime and the news in general.
Well, even though you made me sound 2,000 years old, it's not that far off the mark, really. I've been a journalist since the end of 2003. My God.
When you were just 5 years old, that is amazing.
I know, I was very talented as a child. Anyway, long story short, my career has taken me to Tasmania.
Sames.
That's the end of the list.
Snap.
Just to Tasmania.
Tasmania, Ballarat, the outer suburbs of Werribee in Melbourne, where I first started. I've done
Oh, you've seen it
newspaper.
all.
Oh, you name it. I've been in the trenches, newspaper,
yeah.
radio, TV, but eventually it was TV that I decided to stick with, and I've had now nearly 15 years at Channel 10. So
Can't believe that.
neither
That's
can
so
I.
great.
That's flown by.
Yeah.
Partly because my role keeps changing. And to go back to your question about crime, I spent 3 years, my first 3 years there really, as a crime reporter.
Yeah, wow.
And how come the latter 12 have not been there? Has that been because you're like, get me off
Get me
this
out of this.
round?
Yeah,
Or
crime reporting has an expiration date.
Yeah.
It's always interested me because I come from a family of police officers. So I kind of grew up surrounded by crime stories. But after seeing as many dead bodies as I have and being chased down the street by as many grieving families, understandably, as I have been, there comes a point where you're like, I just want to do a story on a koala stuck up a tree where they're meant to
Yeah. And a great story, by the way.
Thanks.
It's one of my favourites.
Oh, God damn.
God damn.
that is a thing I think a lot of people don't think about, or people think about too much on the other hand when it comes to doing crime reporting, especially for TV. And I'll start with the latter part of that is that people think, you know, oh, you're all vultures just knocking on the doors of victims' families, trying to get a scoop. There's that side
koala's just trying to live his life.
Exactly. He's meant not stuck. He's meant to be in there. But then there's the other side where people go, oh, how cool to report on the gangland war and Lawyer X, and wow, you were the first at scene when Andrew Fraser was released from prison. You know, there's that side of it that people think is really cool, and you get to just do the quote unquote fun stuff. But there's that whole gamut of everything in between, and the vultures knocking on grieving families' doors. That's not I've never met a single person in my career who has thought that is a good and nice and thing to do that hasn't affected you at all. It simply is part of the job sometimes, isn't it?
In our industry, it's called a death knock. And you can refuse them. I refuse them now. It's in our code of ethics. You can say no. But when you're an aspiring and up-and-coming reporter who's hungry and you're trying to get the exclusive and you're trying to chase the latest story of the day, saying no is really not an option. So I've done dozens and dozens of death knocks. And to your point, I think maybe 70% of the time things have ended badly. Chased down the driveway, whatever, abused that. I've had a gun pointed at me. I've had all sorts of stuff. But the other 30% are the people who do want to tell the story of their dead child, relative, aunt, sister, brother, husband, even, in their way of coping with making them not just another body on the street, is to give them a name and talk about who they were and share their life and show us pictures. And it's part of the story, and that's what connects with people at home as well when they're watching TV. If it's just another person on the street, you don't have any emotional connection to that because you don't have their name. You don't know what they've done in their life.
Yep.
You don't know if they're a mother or a father. And so interviewing family members, as awful as sometimes it can be, is a way of them to express their emotions and give this person a voice.
And that's why you ask to do it.
Exactly.
You don't do it to just get a scoop and hopefully a Walkley Award. You know, you do it because
I don't have any of those. I hate awards.
Yeah, but you do it, and not just you personally, but journalists as a whole do that for the families to be able to share their stories as well. So I feel like that kind of potentially leads us a bit into what you'd like to chat to us about today. So am I right in saying that you've prepared a story to share with us about a crime that happened here in Melbourne, but you've got a personal connection to it as well?
That's true. Very true. That was a dramatic.
That was good.
Settle in, everyone.
Like you're really setting the scene. Yeah.
Voice changes completely.
Takes a swig of helium.
No,
it offers a swig of helium.
Swig.
I'll just take a swig of helium.
One shot of helium, please.
Do you have any? That could be actually really funny.
Yeah.
If we just do this whole pod in a chipmunk voice.
I don't think it will be. This is a harrowing
A lot of complaints.
story.
Yeah.
A lot of complaints.
Oh, dear. But yes, you are right. There's been two. I don't want to pick one murder against another. Everyone has an emotional effect on a journalist. I mean, I don't pick favourites with who we've lost, but these two women, and I'm starting with one in particular, have stuck with me ever since and will for the rest of my life. And the first one is this. It's the all too familiar story, which every Australian knows. A woman raped and murdered by a stranger while simply trying to get home. But this one is personal because I covered it as a reporter for Channel 10, and it sent me from Melbourne to Israel and beyond. And it's truly a harrowing tale about the death of Aya Maasarwe. Aya was a Palestinian with Israeli citizenship who moved to Australia for a year to study at La Trobe University in Bundoora, which is in Melbourne's north, on a long exchange through her university in Shanghai. Then, on January 16, 2019, Aya was returning home from the comedy club on the number 86 tram. She got off at the stop closest to her student accommodation and called her sister back in Israel because calling someone as she walked home made her feel safer.
As we're always told.
Mm-hmm. She was no more than 50 metres from the tram stop when she was attacked by a 20-year-old man she had never met. Her sister was still on the line and heard her screaming. She also heard Aya yell in Arabic, "You piece of shit." Her attacker's name was Cody Herman. He struck her 4 times with a metal pole before raping her and hitting her a further 9 times. One of the other things he did to her is so horrific. I've never reported it. I haven't seen anyone else report it. But if anyone wants to do a deep dive, I'm sure it's in the publicly available notes from the sentencing judge. But her cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head.
God.
He then covered her with WD-40 spray and used a cigarette lighter to set her body on fire. Aya's remains were found hours later, and Herman, who was a vagrant, was found hanging out in a park 2 days later where he was arrested. There are sirens going off in the background, and I swear I didn't really bring those.
Weird.
Because I remember this really well because this was after, I believe, Eurydice Dixon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which happened, and she had come back from a comedy club and was walking across a field at the time. And friends of mine knew Eurydice. Eurydice was a aspiring comedian and loved by a lot of people that I know. And I remember this happening not too long after.
Yeah, you're right.
And how
A few
horrific
months,
it was.
wasn't it?
Yeah, and she was much like Jill Meagher to come before her. She was chased. She was stalked down the street after leaving that venue, and as you mentioned, Eurydice was killed on a soccer field.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
I remember Jill Meagher because I lived in Brunswick at the time as well, and she was walking from the Commonwealth ATM and walked down to Hope Street, and it was...
Oh, I've got
God, the
stories
irony.
about that.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
my
irony
God,
of the
yeah.
name of that street.
Yeah. Well, back to Aya. Her remains, as I said, were found hours later. Herman was found in a park 2 days later.
Just hanging out in the park.
Yeah, with some other vagrants. Despite his life of substance abuse, foster care, homelessness and a severe personality disorder, he had no criminal history and claims to have no memory of attacking Aya. Aya's family, who I later got to know very well, were extremely close, and her father, Saeed, ran a very successful company based out of China. And as Melbourne mourned and Australia grieved the loss of yet another young woman to male violence, Saeed and a few other family members flew over. They visited the memorial of flowers and notes of condolence that had grown at the site where Aya's body was found. And by this stage, public vigils had also started being held to honour Aya, and the outcry against another woman being killed by a random male on Melbourne streets was mounting. Her father went to those vigils and stood alongside the thousands of people who were grieving for his beautiful daughter. On that visit, he also spoke to the media multiple times about the family's shock and devastation, and then he flew Aya home. I also flew to Israel, but we can talk about that a bit later. Cody Herman eventually pleaded guilty to Aya's rape and murder, and in October 2019 he was jailed for 36 years with a 30-year non-parole period. Aya's father and her sister flew back out to Australia for his sentencing, and her sister carried a bag which had "Do not objectify me" written on the side.
Wow.
Outside court, Saeed said, "We don't focus about the revenge. This is not our compass, this is not our focus, but to care for the society, for the people, for the ladies to be able to go out and go back home." And about his daughter, he said, "She looked at the people. It doesn't matter what religion, which nation or which colour. She looked at the people on the same level with the same eyes. She liked all the people, all humans. It doesn't matter where and when. This is how I want to remember Aya." And to the Australian government, Scott Morrison was the Prime Minister at the time, and he did make a comment. But to the Australian government, he said, "I wish and hope that they will care more for the people." He then established the Aya Maasarwe Memorial Medical Fellowship Program. It provides financial support to Palestinian physicians who require training in subspecialties so they can return to their communities and build the health capacity of Palestinian societies. And La Trobe then also set up the Aya Maasarwe Memorial Research Scholarship, which focuses on the safety of women and girls and funds research projects with a focus on women's safety. So Aya didn't die for nothing, but she was also 20 and bright and bubbly and
Innocent.
and she was just trying to go home.
When you first heard about this story, do you remember where you were when you first heard about the story for the first time?
At work, I didn't cover it. Our crime reporter at the time did. I'd moved on from that. But I was doing a lot of travel for work, especially overseas stuff. This is obviously just before COVID.
Yeah.
That's all kind of dried up.
Yeah.
But, I got a call a few days later. I was on a rostered day off. I was actually having a facial.
Days off in news.
I'd worked the weekend, so I got some weekdays off.
Okay.
That's why. And I was having a facial and I checked my phone afterwards and I had a missed call from my boss. And I was like, oh, that's annoying. It's my day off. So I called her straight back and she said, you're going to Israel. We've just found out Aya's body is being flown back as part of their religion. They obviously have to bury within 24 hours if they can. And you're going. We need you on a plane in an hour.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
But I wasn't even at home, let alone packed. And in my head, I did some calculations that I needed to get home, be packed and leave in 10 minutes. That obviously didn't happen. Oh, my God.
Wow.
That didn't happen. But I did pack in record time. Qantas valeted our car and they knew exactly what we were flying over for. And they let us bypass a few little bits and pieces so we could fly very, very quickly. And we had to go around the world. I don't know why they did it this way. It obviously was the fastest way to get us there, but we went Melbourne, Singapore, Istanbul, Tel Aviv, and then an hour's drive.
Oh, my God.
And the family knew we were coming. But at the same time, they're not waiting for media. They've got their daughter. They've got their daughter to bury as part of their religious beliefs, and so I was just petrified about this clock. But we made it, and it honestly felt like the Amazing Race. I've got pictures of my cameraman with sweat just dripping off him at the airport in Istanbul because we sprinted for like 2Ks with all this gear just to make our connecting flight. And
Is that Trung?
Yeah, it was.
I remember the photo.
Yeah, so for everyone listening, Trung is one of our brilliant cameramen.
He's amazing.
He's so talented, but he is Vietnamese with a heavy accent. And so, as you're about to hear in Israel, I was translating Vietnamese English to Australian English and then Australian English into Arabic English, and it was all just it was a comedy of errors at times. We did end up making it, and I'm not joking, we made it with 30 seconds to spare.
Oh, wow.
As a woman, I'm obviously not allowed in the mosque, but I wanted to be there as she was brought out of the mosque, and we arrived about 30 seconds before she was carried out.
Oh, wow.
And the cemetery they laid her in was about a 80-metre walk away, so they carried her up there and we filmed all of that, and then we filmed her burial, and then we got an exclusive interview with her father again, who we knew from Melbourne, obviously. And the story went to air, and the next day I was doing some crosses on it from the mosque with the time difference. It was super early in Israel, but 5 p.m. over here. And the moment those live crosses were done and our story had aired, I got a call from our head office in Sydney saying, your boss has cancelled your flights and you need to stay for another 4 days and find 3 more stories.
Oh, wow.
And at this stage I had no driver, I had no transport, I had no fixer, which is someone who translates for you and also hooks you up with local contacts and things. I had absolutely nothing, and it was 8 a.m. in the morning and it was freezing in Israel. It was so cold. And
what do you mean when they say find 3 more stories? What does that mean exactly?
Find them. You're in Israel.
We've sent you over there. We've spent the
we've
network's money. Make it worthwhile for us.
So I tried to call him, but he jumped on a personal flight to London for a holiday. Yeah, and I just...
Oh, he was my boss once too. That's why I'm laughing.
Yeah, I had an actual meltdown in the car park of this mosque, but I am getting to a really good part of this story. After I pulled myself together and realised I had no choice, like my flights were gone. And I had a cameraman who was asleep in a taxi with an Israeli driver who didn't speak English.
Or Vietnamese.
Yeah. I was really up shit creek, and I made a few calls, and I found a fixer, and I was told the price, and I just said, I don't care.
Yeah.
Here's the number of my boss, and here's his email, and whatever you charge, you charge. It's not my problem. I need a driver.
He's about to see the London Eye, but he'll be
Yeah, exactly.
the London Eye at the moment.
Yeah, he's going around in circles on the eye. But
Yeah, when he's finished his Buckingham Palace tour, he'll call you back.
And I had made a really good connection with Aya Maasarwe's cousin, Sharif, who was an incredible young man. And I texted him and I said, is there anything I can do to further Aya's memory from today? I know you've just spent all night grieving her after her funeral, and I feel really bad even sending this text, but is there another way we can talk about Aya today? And he's like, absolutely, no worries, come over.
Wow.
And so they live in these beautiful compounds, I'm going to describe them, and Aya's family weren't poor. So we walked into this incredible compound where the whole family lived, and they insisted that we dine with them, and they put on this beautiful spread of food, like about 20 different dishes, and they're like, eat, please. And we were like, no, we feel so intrusive being here.
What an amazing family.
Incredible family. But there was no saying no. So we had a meal with them, didn't film a moment of that. Obviously, it was very, very private and something I'll cherish. But after that, Sharif suggested we go to Aya's primary school and high school, which was literally behind their estate. And things are very different outside Australia.
Yeah.
You know,
Funny that.
a journalist here can't just walk into a primary school
Yeah.
and say, hey, can I speak to the principal? And then, next minute you're sitting down with them and being shown hundreds of photos and videos of Aya growing up. Like, this principal was amazing, and we sat down with them, with Sharif as well, obviously, and yeah, the school provided us with dozens and dozens of videos, her riding horses on school camps and things, and basically they documented her whole life, and they just handed it over to us.
Wow.
And we interviewed the family again, and then all of that makes a beautiful follow-up news story about Aya's life, not just surface level in Melbourne and what she was studying here, but more about what she'd come from and who she was.
It also takes it away from then being about her death.
Yeah,
which is
correct.
something that's so hard when it is in the news. And we talk about this a lot on this podcast too. It's awful to only talk about someone in their death and what happened to them and the person who took their life.
And such a
that's
horrific death as well. Like,
awful. And going back to the death knocks, it's part of the reason people do agree to be interviewed, because they don't want their partner or daughter or whatever to be remembered about their death. They want them to be remembered about the life they lived and who they were as a person. And so what came of this was a beautiful backstory about Aya's life, and her family were involved, and we just pinched ourselves that we were in this moment, and that was an exclusive as well. So it was just incredible being there, and I maintained relationships with them, and her dad and her sister, obviously, as I said, flew back for Herman's sentencing, and then her father and Sharif actually flew out when they announced the memorial fund. So I've had dinner with them in Melbourne as well.
That's beautiful.
What strong people to have to fly over to a country where this happened as well.
Yeah.
And such a different country to them as well, to actually come over and speak about it.
Yeah.
You think
That
it could be very easy to just absolutely hate us
Yeah,
in our country
yeah.
and never want to step foot
Yeah.
here.
I did get the vibe that they weren't enamoured with Melbourne.
Oh,
No.
no,
No,
shit.
you wouldn't be,
Yeah. I'm not saying they're booking another flight to check it
Yeah.
out
No,
anytime
of
soon.
course not.
They did do some sightseeing on their last visit. But, yeah, I mean, it's always going to be a place that was tragic for them.
Absolutely, but that's
Yeah.
what we mean. Even more amazing that they brought themselves here to see that part of it out, to attend the sentencing, to make those really strong comments to the media, to government about that. What strong people.
Oh, I wish – it's funny sometimes, not funny, but I don't know another word for it. When you do stories about people who have been killed and then suddenly you find yourself going, God, I wish I could meet them.
Yeah. And you got to know her so well without meeting her.
I wish I could meet her.
Oh, that's beautiful. What was it like for you being at her, did they call it her funeral or her memorial at the mosque?
Yeah, I actually went through my texts between myself and Sharif today because we were walking. Obviously, there was no, what's it called, order of service printed or something. I didn't know what was about to happen. And as I said, we got there 30 seconds beforehand.
Yeah.
We were barely even set up when her coffin comes out and they just start walking. I didn't even know they were walking to a cemetery.
Wow.
We just started filming and following because that's what we were there to do.
Yeah.
And I found these texts between myself and Sharif, and I'm saying, I'm the only person here. Sorry, I'm the only female here in this cemetery. Am I allowed to be here?
Oh, wow. Yeah, you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Because it all happened so fast, I suddenly looked around and realised everyone was male.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to offend. The last thing I
course.
wanted to do was to offend anyone. I just lobbed out of the thin blue sky with, blonde hair and looking very westernised, done up,
A little bit out of place.
just a little bit out of
cemetery.
place. And I turn around and I'm like, shit, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to stand here.
Wow.
But I looked back through my messages, which I'm trying to find for you now. And he's like, yeah, absolutely, you can be here. No harm at all. So, it was a bit of a culture shock.
Yeah.
They were so open to you by the sounds of it. That's incredible. What a beautiful family.
Yeah. And then it was quite an intense burial. Like they do all their customary things, and that's very obviously foreign to me. But you just stand back and watch and respect what they're going through, and the fact they let us. We were basically graveside. We were right there as they were putting flowers on her coffin and covering it with dirt, and never once were they angry or they actually genuinely wanted us there.
They wanted her to be remembered.
And they wanted her to be remembered, and it was
of course.
beautiful. And she was buried in this spot which is kind of on a big hill with a beautiful view, and she's got the edge. So
Oh, beautiful.
she was looking out.
Yeah.
And if I ever find my way back there, obviously a lot has changed in that region since, but Tel Aviv was beautiful. And I've always wanted to return. And if I ever get to go back, I'm totally visiting her. She's about an hour's drive out.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you remember, Sammy asked before if you remember hearing about the story in the first place. What were your initial thoughts? Obviously, I say obviously, but tell me if I'm wrong. You wouldn't have known you were going to go on to have this incredibly close connection, quote unquote.
Well, it wasn't
with
my
her.
story. It wasn't my story. It was my colleague's story to cover, but it became my story because at that time I was being flown around a lot.
But also just as a female in Melbourne. I remember at the time
what?
I didn't cover that myself personally as a news story, but God, it affected me.
My initial reaction was, here we go again.
Yep.
This is another one.
Yeah.
I've covered all of Jill Meagher, and Jill Meagher will stay with me till the day I die. A bit of Eurydice, and then there's so many others in between. But when I heard about Aya, I was like, oh yeah. I found the location very strange.
Yeah.
I remember thinking Bandura. I know Bandura well, and to people not from Melbourne who are listening, it's it's a solid 45 to an hour's drive out of the CBD.
Yeah, it's
north.
very suburban.
So suburban. And a lot of these other murders had been happening in Melbourne where women had been walking home from, you know, thriving venues. And I was like, how Bandura? That's really weird. Maybe it's domestic violence related. That's where my head was going. It would be highly unusual for a stranger to kill a stranger that far out of Melbourne.
That's exactly what happened.
In an opportunistic attack on the street, and that is exactly what happened.
Wow.
And if anyone Googles this, you will find that it came out during his sentencing that he had been caught on CCTV being in the vicinity of her university accommodation, but that was just his life. He was just being a bit of a snoop, really.
Yeah.
There wasn't any inference that he was stalking her.
Nope, there was no stalking. He had never set eyes on Aya Maasarwe ever.
Wow.
So it was completely random, but he was basically homeless in and around that area. So initially they did go down the path of, oh, well, you know, he's been caught on camera near her house. There must be a connection. There was no connection.
No, it's completely random.
Just trying to get home.
Yeah.
When he eventually pleaded guilty, do you know or remember whether he ended up saying that he did remember it, or did he maintain that he didn't remember?
No, he was asked if he ever thought about it and what he'd done, and his reply was maybe every couple of days.
Oh, God.
God. How awful.
Yeah, that was a 21-year-old.
Yeah.
And I know that, you know, he hasn't had the greatest upbringing. He's had an awful upbringing. He's from a German father and an Indigenous mother, and I'm pretty sure he had no contact with his father at all. His mother had also dealt with substance abuse issues, and so he was put into foster care and very clearly slipped through the cracks, was on ice. The reason why he was arrested in that park was because that's kind of where he lived and hung out.
Yeah.
He'd hang out with other people of no fixed address in these areas and just kind of loiter. I guess that's the best word. He's a loiterer and drug user. And then during sentencing, obviously they psychologically evaluate him, and he was found to have a personality disorder, a very severe one. But I find it hard in my heart to let all of those things excuse the behaviour.
Of course. Yeah. And you hear about that as well with a lot of people that, you know, sometimes people do go on about the killer themselves, like go on, you know, and some of them do have really awful lives and everything, but you can't ever forget, you know,
Your
what
dog
they
died
actually
when
did.
you were 3.
Yeah.
I know. Well,
Yeah.
we've
This
all
is the
had
thing,
these
there are
stories.
mitigating factors in
Correct.
every case, but the level of mitigation is, I think, almost a personal opinion. How much you let the factors mitigate what has happened. And, you know, there's not an inference here that he woke up one morning and was an upstanding citizen and decided he wanted to do this because he was evil inside. However, that doesn't make it any easier to palate what he did.
And even the fact he doesn't remember, or if he does remember, or if he now remembers, who knows. But just because you don't remember doesn't mean you didn't do it.
No,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Was it the CCTV that linked him to it in the end? I can't remember why they caught him.
He discarded some clothing. He threw a beanie over a fence, and he basically just left a trail of stuff. And from that, they took his DNA profile and
Pretty clear cut.
worked out who he was, and then tracked him down to a park. And that's another sort of. It's very clear that he didn't really plan.
Yeah.
At least in the execution of it, he didn't really plan it. But there was a level of planning, even though he claims not to remember how he came across the WD-40
Yeah.
and how
He still had it.
and how he had a cigarette lighter.
Yeah.
And he still
Readily
had
available.
it. He still had it.
Yeah. Oh God, that's just awful.
Horrifying.
Awful.
When you look at this, like look back on this now, what is something that you take away from this? Is there, you know, a memory, anything? I mean, you've spoken about a lot about the family. Is there anything that you remember? That
Yeah,
kind of sticks out?
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't contacted her dad for a long time. But the last I heard from Sharif, he had moved to New York and gotten married,
wow.
which is lovely. I just obviously as well during the Israel-Gaza conflict, I just hope they're well.
Yeah.
They live not in Gaza, they live in Israel, but they are Palestinians living in Israel. So actually doing this podcast has prompted me to think I probably should get in touch. But they're just the most beautiful family. But what do I think about this? I don't know. Jill Meagher also had a huge effect on my life. She went to 3 birthday parties that night, and one of them was a mutual friend.
Oh, wow.
I never knew that.
The first one she went to. So she was an employee of the ABC at the time, and she went to a friend's party and he worked at the ABC. Then she went to another and then another. And it wasn't until she was coming home from the third one that Adrian Bailey found her and killed her. But that had a huge effect on me as well, not just because she was at my friend's birthday party.
It's just that closer connection, isn't it? Yeah.
But yeah, then a few other things happened. Like her birth date ended up being exactly 2 weeks after mine, so we were very close. We both used to work at the ABC. And then I turned up to the Brunswick police station the morning she was missing, and her husband Tom had just done a very quick interview with the Today Show. And so I grabbed him. He's just standing in the car park of Brunswick police station, and I grabbed him and I said, sorry, I know you've just spoken about this briefly, but can we talk to you as well? And he's like, absolutely, no problem. And at that point, he genuinely thought she was on a friend's couch or
She was a missing person at that point.
Yeah, to him, she definitely wasn't dead. And I grabbed him and we were interviewing, and we had a really good chat afterwards, and we were still standing there with him when the police came up to us and said, Tom, we need you to come with us now. We've found something.
God.
And he's like, I don't have my car. And so we put him in our car. We drove him. This is so fucked. We drove him to Hope Street.
Oh, wow.
Where they'd just found her handbag and its contents was being rummaged through by police to positively identify that it was actually her handbag. And we pulled up at Hope Street and looked down this alley, and he and I jumped out of the car, and I hung back, obviously, and he went over and checked if it was hers, and it was. And in that exact moment, it became not a my wife hasn't come home from a night out story. It became a what the hell has happened to Jill story, because her bag was there and nothing else. Her lanyard from the ABC, all of her possessions, and suddenly everything was turned on its head, really. And he, again, was a beautiful human. He now lives back in Ireland, where they're from, but getting close to him during that time was also something that stayed with me and something I cherish, because I hope that at the end of the day we did her story justice as well. I mean, that week was the hardest I've ever worked in my life. I did like 95 hours in 5 days. And the second last night, I was sitting as close as you guys and I are now from Adrian Bailey in court.
God.
I'd spent all these days covering this story, and suddenly I'm sitting next to, in this late night late night bail application, basically next to him. I could have reached out and touched the guy. It was fucking weird. And just the way that unfolded, every single day there was something new, another twist, another piece of the puzzle. And then the night that they arrested Adrian, and he led them to her remains, which were hours out of Melbourne in a shallow grave beside a dirt road, I'll never, ever forget it. And then at like 4 a.m, I'm sitting next to him in this bail application hearing. Sorry, not bail application, remand hearing. My God, remand hearing. And I just remember looking at him going, A, you're the person who's responsible for all this. Has just blown my mind. B, you are the reddest person I've ever seen. He was bright red.
Oh.
I've never met a redder human.
Yeah,
I wonder
wow.
if that's like some kind of stress
Bright
reactor
red.
or
Yeah.
something.
Strawberry blonde hair and bright red.
Right.
I'll never forget that.
Can
Anyway.
you tell us, I mean, so many of our listeners, I would think, and I probably hope, have never sat face to face in touching distance to a murderer. What was that like? What was the feeling like? Like even
After
take
covering
away,
it as well and like knowing,
Did it feel different? It sounds like such a dumb question, but I feel like that's what people want to know. Did it feel different?
It felt weird. Like I've come face to face with a lot of killers, but mostly in a court setting. This was a very casual court setting, not like a Supreme Court setting.
Yeah, where the behind
This was
the
a
dock.
hurried 4 a.m. situation. Very closed, very intimate. And I just remember looking at him and going, I can't believe that this little story, what I thought was a little story on the morning about a girl who hadn't come home from celebrating her friend's birthdays, to driving her husband to find her handbag, to finding CCTV which showed her being stalked by this person. There's sirens again in the background, guys.
This is really weird.
What's
I've
going on?
never heard
No,
sirens in your house
there's
before.
so many sirens
All the
going
doors
off.
are closed.
Yeah.
Oh my
they're so
God.
loud.
Then we get off this podcast and discover that the world's ended
No,
outside.
I think this
No,
is
it's fine.
Jill and Aya
Yeah.
saying thank you, Candice, for covering this story.
Maybe.
Oh my God, they're so loud.
It's so loud.
God,
I don't think you'll hear it on here. We're not just making it up.
I reckon
Everyone can hear it.
I reckon you might hear it on
Yeah.
air. If not, just add some siren
There's
sound
lots of
effects
sirens.
so that we don't sound silly. But yeah, I just every single day there was another piece to this puzzle, and then Tom and Jill's house was raided, and some people I still remember, some people who I will not name were like, "Told you it was the husband.
Yeah.
It's always
People
the husband."
That would have been, yeah.
No, I've known Tom from the moment this fuckery started 5 days ago. This is not him.
Yeah.
I'm telling you now. And others were like, "Nah, it is. It's
So-
not." They raided his house as part of the process to eliminate him, basically.
Yeah.
And then it was the next day, I'm pretty sure, that they arrested Adrian Bailey. And that night that we ended up in court, while they were, I don't want to say digging up, well, they were recovering Jill's remains. It was all happening at once. And then I didn't sleep. I stayed on, did the story the next day about how there's been a breakthrough, there's been this arrest, his name is this, he looks like this, and they've found Jill out here by this road. And then that night there was a vigil down Sydney Road with thousands and thousands of people. And I remember doing live crosses to every city for Channel 10, so obviously starting in Melbourne, and then every other city was interested, and then the project was interested, and in the project cross I cried.
Wow.
And I remember the producer in my ear at the end saying, "You're right." I was like, no, I don't think I am actually.
Yeah.
As a journo, you never want to cry on air, but in the years that have followed since, I've realised it's just a human.
Yeah. A human response.
Very normal. I'm going to cry again now. It's a very normal human emotion to a week that I will never forget. Like, and I'm talking to you as a journalist, but also, God, I am crying. She was my age. She worked at my former employer. We shared friends. You know, I'd never met her. Again, I would have loved to. Why am I crying, guys?
As you said, it's a normal human emotion.
Well, at that time, I was the crime reporter, and, you know, you like to think that you're this hardened journo who's going to knock down doors and chase people and, you know, go to Greece and find random criminals wearing dodgy wigs who might be named Tony Mockbell. You know, you think you're this kind of nothing affects me kind of journo, but it does. And Jill and I both have.
Was that the big piece of evidence? Was it that they found the CCTV footage from the ATM that he was following?
Not the ATM.
Not the
So
ATM?
the
Dress shop.
There was two.
Dress shop,
one from the
yeah.
dress shop. The first one though was the pizza shop. The pizza shop is the vision that shows him bolting down the street, and at that point you don't really see her, but you see him sprinting. You're like, what is he sprinting after? And he sprints to catch up with Jill, and then that takes us to the next piece of CCTV, which was the dress shop. That's where he catches up with her and fumbles his way through a conversation about directions and whatever else he claims that they spoke about. And it was just behind that dress shop where she she was walking past the laneway to go home. She lived so close to that dress shop. I can't tell you how close. And he followed her and dragged her down an alley, which basically runs behind her house almost. And that was the alley off Hope Street where we'd driven Tom to see his wife's handbag. She was so close to home. She nearly made it, but this monster decided to chase her. And there was the ATM vision you're talking about, and there's also vision from a pub. He was, drunk and getting money out to, be on the piers and do whatever else. I think even some of the people he was out with that night decided he was acting weird, he was being strange, and they kind of left him to his own devices, and he just stayed out on his own. And yeah, he had a criminal record, unlike Aya Maasarwe's killer. Adrian Bailey did have a criminal record and a violent criminal record, but he'd never escalated to this level. But often that is the pattern, right? Yeah. They try a few things on, and then they decide to go decide to go a little further, and they escalate their behaviour, and that's what he did that night.
How have these two stories affected you as a human, not as a journalist? And the stories themselves, not even so much covering them, just being a woman in Melbourne, let alone someone who's become so close to the stories.
Yeah, well, I now cry on podcasts apparently, so that's who I am.
Welcome.
I did warn you when I sat down. I said there might be tears. These two women are on my sleeve.
Well, you did say at the start, I've never heard crying on the podcast before, and I thought you said I've never heard crime on this podcast before.
Well, that's
how brutal.
That's offensive.
Do you guys even talk about
You can even talk about crime.
Podcast is shit. I know you call yourself Not Another Crime Podcast, but can you please get some crime? How they've affected my life? Well, yeah, I honestly will carry both of those women with me for the rest of my life. They both should be here living their best lives now. It's a fucking crying shame that they're not. They just both happened upon monsters in the night as they were trying to go home. And now I'm crying again. Thanks, Georgia.
You're welcome.
But also, yeah, as a woman trying to get home, I live in inner city Melbourne. Sorry, I should say an inner city suburb of Melbourne, which even though it's inner city, I'm like 2.5 k's from the CBD, it still does have a community feel. It's very community focused. And lots of community groups, and it's got a market, which is kind of unheard of unless you're in a rural area. It's got this beautiful farmers market on the weekly, and it's just a gorgeous community. And you see the same faces and people kind of all the time. But I probably should take my own advice, because that has kind of impacted how I feel in my community. I kind of walk around like, I live here and it's not going to happen to me.
Yeah.
I know this community. I know this suburb so well. So I do walk home alone at night quite often. But part of me is like, this is where I live. Like, if you want to come and get me, come and get me. I don't know. I shouldn't be doing that, but
this is the thing. You talk about rules of what you should and shouldn't be doing. That's what Aya did. She got on the phone to her sister, because that's what we're told as females to do. Hold your keys in your hand. Talk on your phone.
Right. And ever since Jill, there was this big movement after Jill was killed about always text your friends when you're home. Like, are you home safe? It doesn't matter how many friends. If you're out with 5 of them, text all of them.
Yeah.
And I've continued that to this day. So even though I will walk home, if it's in walking distance, I will always text my friends or the owners of the bar I was at, because as I said, it's a community, and I know the bar owners as well.
Yeah.
I'll always text them and be like, home safe, how are you? Are you home safe? And we always cross-check before. I could never go to sleep without knowing that, my friends weren't home yet.
Yeah.
All right, I've got a bone to pick with you. When we went out 2 weeks ago, after Sammy's show, when we all left, by the time I got home, I went, Candice, you should have been home before me. Are you home? And you messaged me the next morning going, sorry, must have passed out.
Oh, shit.
Oh, damn it. All right, you've been called out now. Never again.
But at least you text, see?
Yeah.
It's just at least sending the text. did you sleep knowing I hadn't replied? You better not have slept.
What kind of friend are you?
I hope you worried about me all night long.
Oh, she didn't even message me. I can have the calmest sleep of my life. Phone's not going to go off.
I'm sorry about that. I don't know how I missed it. I do love a shower sleep.
Yeah.
So-
Oh my God, please tell that story. We need to finish this on a lighter note.
Yeah, and we will do these.
Please.
I think these stories as episodes because I think we need to talk about this in great detail as well and do a full story on it because that's amazing that you brought these stories today as well.
Thank you. But if you want a lighter note, do I have a story for you? Actually, it's multiple stories kind of rolled into one. But I am terrible at getting home after a few drinks and deciding that the bottom of the shower is the best place to sleep.
Okay.
Which we
Where did
will
this
say
start?
very much on the record, it's not.
No.
And do not try this at home.
Kids, don't try this
No.
at home. I don't know why I do this. I don't know why I'm like this, guys. I just get like a little warm and cozy, and I'm like, I'm just gonna scooch in here. I'm just gonna scooch down and lie here for a minute. And it's so warm and and so the first time it happened was so bad. I was not living where I'm living now. I was living in a 2-story townhouse, which was quite modern, and so
Yeah, big dog.
but my butt cheek swallowed the drain.
Swallowed the drain plug? Or the drain?
Swallow it.
I have.
Like suction.
Yes.
Because the sink, like the drain is trying to suck the water, but Candice's bum cheek was on it. So
Yeah.
it sucked her bum cheek.
Literally,
Oh my God.
Sammy, I have the best picture of the drain imprint, which is purple, on my butt cheek.
Oh
'cause
my
it
God.
Sucked it in. And where
Big
did
ol' suckerfish.
Where did the water have to go? Nowhere.
Yeah.
So what happened?
Yeah.
I wake up hours later in my upstairs ensuite to find. So I remember I had my dog at the time. I open my eyes, I'm on the side, and I look out the shower, and there's my dog Shelby, basically swimming, doggy paddling through the ensuite, and the next thing that goes by is my bra. It's
In
just
the
like
stream.
yeah, it's just like this bra, and I'm like, what the hell? I get up, I walk out into my bedroom, and it's just like the carpet was just
Squelching.
the carpet was just squelching. I went downstairs, and all of downstairs was like polished concrete, but we had downlights, and the downlights were raining.
Oh no.
Rain, like actual rain coming through. But because I'd had a few drinks, just a few, I was like, that'll buff out.
Yeah, that's going to be fine. That's all going to be fine. I wouldn't worry about
So
it.
I put all the split system heaters on. There was 3 in the house. I put all 3 on and just went to sleep.
That's so
In
funny.
bed.
In bed.
Oh, good for you. Okay.
I'm like, it's going to be fine.
Not
I
in the
woke
most
up-
comfy position in the house, apparently.
I woke
The
up
bottom
the
of the
next
shower.
It is. Try it sometime. I woke up.
We
the
will
next
not.
morning.
I won't.
No,
I
don't.
This is a warning.
It's a warning because this damage ended up costing me so much money. I woke up the next morning and I was like, still wet. So I called this is back when we had a newsroom PA. Budget cuts means we don't anymore. But I called her and
Too
she'd
many
been
sleepy shower moments.
she'd been out with me as well.
Oh.
And she answers with something like, babe, I just threw up in the bathroom. I'm like,
Better
babe,
than anywhere else.
I flooded my house.
I win.
I need your help. And she's like, on it. So within about 5 minutes, she texts me the name and number of some dude to call. So I called him and like, this is what has happened. Can you come out and fix it? He's like, yeah, sure. We can be there in 45 minutes. And I had to leave for work in 48 minutes.
Oh my God.
So I'm like, if you hit the road now, you'll make it. And so I just literally crossed him at the door. I was like, here's my keys. That's my dog, Shelby. Bye.
Oh my God.
And I went off to work. La, 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 la. Just-
Again, not a great ad. Don't do that.
Don't do this.
let a man
No,
into your
no,
house
don't
and
do
leave
this.
him with your keys and your dog.
True, but he was great. And
Luckily.
I've now probably financed an apartment for him in the Bahamas because I came home to find all that could be sponged up was sponged up, but there were these massive industrial fans pointing at the walls and the ceilings. And the hire of those fans is what gets you.
Oh,
Yeah, I've done the same thing.
Oh,
And
what?
I've had these fans as
Well,
well.
now
Your
you pipe
bum
up.
swallowed.
Yeah.
Drain as
I was
well.
having a shower sleepy as well. But I had the same thing happen when I left a dish. I had a washing machine, and the drain, it wasn't plugged in, and I
no.
went out and came back, and it was all, and I had to hire these like industrial fans. That's what gets
So-
you every time.
I do have a few videos of me using those fans in like a Beyonce film clips, right?
Yeah.
They were fun. But the cost of the hire, like the call out fee's like $60. So I was like, great.
Right.
All
Done.
done for
Nothing.
$60?
Yeah.
No, it was thousands and thousands of
Oh my god,
fanage.
Vantage.
I have some fans, but those ones I never want to see again.
Oh.
And then a few days later, the body corporate sent out this urgent mass email saying that all the fire alarms were offline because water had gotten into someone's,
yeah.
and they'd be investigating in the morning.
Uh-oh.
Don't investigate any further.
Do you know what? Don't worry about it. It's look, someone's done it. We don't
Someone's done
want
it.
to point
Someone.
fingers. We don't want to point fingers. We're all
But
community
the
here.
fans were still there.
Oh no!
So I had to haul the fans up the stairs, all the fans, into my housemate at the time, into his bedroom. I had to hide all the fans. I made the house spick and span.
Yeah.
And when he arrived at the front gate at 7 a.m.
to investigate.
I intercepted him, dressed to the nines, hair and makeup all done, not looking like someone who could possibly
Never have done this.
ruin a whole complex of fire alarms, and shuffled him into my. I was like, "Don't wake up everyone else." I reckon it was me. I think my my washing machine flooded last week.
I got that advice from Sammy.
yeah.
And it was also upstairs, so it made sense, right? And I was like, "Don't wake up everyone." He's like, "Oh, I've already pushed one buzzer." I'm like, "Okay, fine, go and see them, fine." And then he came to me. He opens up the fire alarm thing on the ceiling, and gush, like all this water fell on his head, leaves, everything. All this stuff comes out, and it came out. Sorry, did I say comed out?
You said comes.
Comes out. All this stuff comes out, and yeah, it did all over his head. And he was like, "Yeah, I reckon this is it."
you.
And that's the story about why we text our friends when we get home.
Yes, dear listeners, we have given you so much advice today on so
It's
many
been packed.
things.
Yeah.
Do
Thank
not
you
try
so
to
much.
get away with flooding your apartment. Do not
Never.
sleep on the floor.
That's
do
right.
not walk home alone.
That's right.
So many pieces of advice. Candice, thank you so much.
And my last piece of advice is to not forget those two women I spoke about.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Thank you
absolutely.
so much for sharing their stories and your story about your connection to them too. It is so important, I think, and maybe this is my bias as a journalist as well, but to be able to connect people with stories on some kind of personal level.
Yeah.
And you've really done that. And I think that's really beautiful because it does make these people more than a name in a newspaper that they read.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.